Hey, welcome back to Mocktails with Marina. I'm your host, Marina, and today we're sitting down with Rebecca Styn, the powerhouse behind Blind Tiger, a spirit free cocktail company born out of resilience, creativity, and a deep love for inclusive hospitality. From pivoting during the pandemic to building an award winning brand that's reimagining what it means to toast without the booze, Rebecca's story is one you won't want to miss. So let's get right into it. Thank you so much for being here today, Rebecca.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I am so excited to get right into your story because there's so many details. So let's go right from the beginning. Can you walk us through the moment that the idea for Blind Tiger was born? What were those early pandemic days like?
Yes. I'm gonna preface this. There's a backstory to the backstory, which I don't often share. But so Blind Tiger came to be during COVID. I had a restaurant, Room 33, speakeasy-style. We opened it in 2017. Over the years, it had become known for its craft cocktails. And then in 2020, we were mandated to take out only. And in Pennsylvania, we were not legally allowed to sell alcohol to go. So either could shut our doors or come up with some alternative options. And one of those was bottling non-alcoholic versions of our drinks. And I had noticed over the years, and we had started on a very small scale to kind of incorporate the NA options into our menu. But just in travels, as I got older, I still like a glass of wine or a cocktail, but I can't handle alcohol like I used to at, 21 or younger, probably, even though we weren't allowed, right? It just doesn't have the same effect. And there weren't a ton of sophisticated options. So it was the combination of that, and then obviously, being forced into having to pivot during COVID, that really just sparked my insanity. And I woke up one day and wondered if I could bring this to market. And so I went to the team at Room 33, our mixologist, and said, this is what I would like to do. I want to keep with our brand, which is Prohibition-era, the speakeasies. And Blind Tiger is actually a moniker for speakeasies. And they were on board. And that was really the impetus that kind of set everything in motion. I had put all my money into the restaurant. So I thought I would probably bootstrap this a lot more. But then there is a group called Ben Franklin Technology Partners in Pennsylvania, and every year they host a big idea competition. And I applied for it and ended up winning the grand prize, which ended up allowing me to really do so much more out of the gate, right? So I was like,
Wow.
serendipitous, this must be. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
Oh, this is so cool. So not only did you were already doing something, you already had a whole business structure, a whole life going on, and then as the pandemic had a huge effect on many people, you chose to take that and pivot with it, which is so cool. And I also want to chat for a second about, before we dive back into the story, you chose like one of the best ingredient lists I have ever seen on
Oh,
these type of cocktails. We are very, here at the Modern Mocktail specifically, like we're very specifically picky because our clients always want us to help them figure out, okay, which drinks are great for the wellness people, which drinks are great for each category and aspect of the entire industry. And if there are people who are looking to drink less, they tend to also want to have some other healthier choices there. So I'd love to hear from you what it was like for the whole formulation process. You were already mastering the art of cocktails in the first place, but the fact that you chose this route, I think, is just really cool. I'd love to hear more about that.
yeah, thank you. When we first started working on the formulations, her name's Lizzie. She's now co-owner of Room 33, and she was our chief mixologist at the time. Then I had gone to her and I said, hey, I'd love for you to come up with four classic cocktails that you would like to replicate. But what I want to do is instead of using whiskey or gin or whatever, I want you to find the natural ingredients that would kind of mimic that, right? So if it called for gin, we used juniper, which was very heavily used in the Prohibition era due to the making of terrible bathtub gin. And then if it called for bourbon, there was actually like a variety of different fruits you would put together, right? To kind of give you that essence. And then what happened was, at that point, I needed to bring on a beverage engineer so I could create a product that didn't kill people in the process, right? Because if I was going to bottle and can it and sell it, I needed to know, like, I wanted it to have a shelf life to it, you know?
Right.
And what the main thing that was important to me at that time was ensuring that everything we used was all natural, clean label, nothing artificial. Outside of that, I was open, right? Like I know there's a lot of people that want no sugar, but being true to the actual cocktail itself, cocktails have sugar in them, right? They use
Hmm.
simple syrups, you know, so we use cane sugar, so nothing refined. And that was very intentional because I wanted it to still have the body and the depth of an actual cocktail. And even if I couldn't deliver, like there was no after effects, there were no functionality to it or anything like that. But I wanted people to feel when they held a glass in their hand or they took a sip of the product that they felt like they were drinking something more complex than a diet soda or sparkling water. So.
Well, I think that this is not only have you accomplished this goal, but it's been so fun because on the packaging, it specifically says, like, yeah, you can drink this alone or you can mix it with things. And now that there's all these other non-alc spirits coming out that aren't alcohol analogs. They're their own thing, right? For example, Kava Haven's one of my favorite because Kava makes me nice and calm. So we've been playing around with mixing different things and it's delicious every time. It's so fun. It works really well. So definitely shout out to your mixologist and your whole team for putting together such a banger product here. So we talk a lot about prohibition and you talk about the history so much already, how much it's like woven in your brand. So tell me more about why you love the prohibition era and how you've brought that in.
Yes. So this is like one of the things that I wish I could find a succinct way to really get this messaging out to our audience, right? Or our consumer base. Because one of the things for me all throughout my entire career, because prior to owning the restaurant, I did a lot of event planning, I was in marketing, and it was creating options to bring everybody together, right? Like I loved bringing people together. And the Prohibition era did just that, right? Even though it was like illicit alcohol and that's what it was known for, there was a lot of things that happened during Prohibition that I don't think we fully realize today. Like prior to Prohibition, women were not allowed in bars. The jazz age ensued, women's right to vote happened over these, and they drove this inclusivity element to it. And that's really where our mission and our goal lies. Like whether you drink or you don't, everybody should feel part of the occasion, right? And that was where we were going with it. And so Prohibition played a huge part of that. And there is a element of ill-perceived glamour, right? That was associated with Prohibition, but it's a fun little era that people like to, why there's a ton of Roaring Twenties parties today. And then in addition to that, we're in the 20s again, right? This is a century later. So I'm like, this is a great time to expose the history, the purported histories, the tales, everything tied to it, and just build this fun brand that people can just enjoy.
Yeah, when we first started talking and you had mentioned that, yeah, Prohibition really was the first time that women could be in bars. I hadn't even thought of that before. Might be because I love watching Westerns, and of course, there's lots of women in those bars. But for those of you who watch Westerns, you know that the women in those bars are in a particular class in society. And if any other woman was to come into the bar, they would immediately be like shunned, or all the things would be an issue. So I hadn't thought of that until we started this conversation. And I think that's so interesting because uh, I have a background in burlesque. So that's where I
Okay.
started back in the day with my performance art. And I was also like doing a lot of other circus stuff. But the thing about burlesque that got me so intrigued was the fact that in the 20s, in the Prohibition era, this was like the first time we saw some women who were performing, like they would start to become these like political allies. Like
Mhm.
they were the only people who were allowed in the high-end speakeasies who would kind of, how to put it, kind of weave in between all the different types of speakeasies because performers they travel from like bar to bar. So to me, in my early 20s when I was like hyper glamorizing all of the things, I was like,
Sure.
oh, maybe this is how I can get into some cool rooms and do some cool fun things like entertain wild, like I don't know where it's gonna go. Obviously, when you don't know where you're going, you head into wild directions quickly. And that was part of, when the pandemic struck and I could no longer perform and I also had to pivot my business. Well, one of the parts. Point of all of this is it felt like a an ode to the 20s. And I noticed this theme coming back often. So point of all of this is, when you bring up the the importance of providing an option for everybody in the bars and really showcasing that, I think that this is a really great story to tell. What got you interested in this in the first place? Like, what was the first thing that made you think, like, okay, I need to go hard on this message because, yeah, it's cute, yeah, it's beautiful, and we're all attracted to it. But on a deeper level, like, what made you decide to, like, literally gamble by starting a business with this?
Yes. So, I mean, my life is pretty varied prior to that. So, I actually have a undergrad degree in music. I was a piano performer like for most of my life. It's
Cool.
really hard to find a job as a performer,
Yes.
but so I went on and got my master's in public administration, got really involved in our community. I was super involved in our community on a lot of boards, planned a lot of events, really loved, trying to create something bigger for Erie, where I'm based. And during that time, towards the tail end, I ran for office twice, for political office, for city council the second time. I lost by like 300 votes. And my husband ran for office as well for city council, and he lost by very minimal votes too. But during that time, we we talked about our pillars were investing in our downtown. So at that moment, our downtown zip code 16501 was the poorest zip code in all of America. And we were trying to find ways, when we were out there doing the messaging, kind of being on this platform as, running a campaign. But when we couldn't win, we were like, all right, let's put our money where our mouth was, right? When we were out there talking. So that's what made us ultimately open Room 33. We had seen a number of great speakeasies in our travels. We didn't have one here. And that I was like, if we're going to do this, let's do something different, right? Like, so that was really kind of the culmination of things, is kind of building upon what we were out there already preaching, and then creating something new for our downtown environment. So which has done well over the years.
Yeah. Wow, this story just gets cooler and cooler as we dive in. And it just goes to show, like, in every detail, there's room for thought to not just be like, okay, here's a cool opportunity, market opportunity. People aren't drinking. Let's make something to make some money. Like, there's more than that. There's like this awesome impact goal on multiple levels here. So all of that being said, we have listeners all over the world now, which is like crazy.
Awesome.
And, we have people who, they're like, okay, cool. I love your drink. I'm ready to serve them and do the things. What can the people who are listening and want to host their own parties, what can they do to really embody the spirit that you are canning and selling to them?
Okay, so when you say embodying the spirit, give me a little bit more. Like,
Yeah. So here's what I'm saying. So, for example, I was a kava tender for a while at a kava bar, and this is like a very special kind of non-alc bar where people would, of all different kinds of product backgrounds, would drop things off because kava bars are weird. They're random things that, like, very many random things can be sold at. So because of that, we would have a lot of samples of like very many products. And what we had learned was there were a few products that had come through at first that we tried and we were like, oh, this is terrible. And now we're like hurting and oh my gosh. And then the sales rep came by later and was like, whoa, that's maybe because that's not how you're supposed to consume it. Or if it was a functional one.
got it.
Or,
Yeah.
for example, we had some other mixers that were given to us. And, as mixologists, we had fun with it. But because we didn't actually understand the story behind their like product, we didn't do a good job selling it until, again, we had gotten that education from the sales rep and they were like, oh no, here's the story you want to tell while you're serving the drinks so that like people get it and they're like deeply in the experience. So like if a server is putting your drink, you know, in front of someone and they're making it into this beautiful concoction, like what story do you want them to tell while they're giving that glass to them?
Yes. So the nice part, especially today, about our product, and I don't know if I had mentioned this earlier, when we first created our product, we were in 32-ounce bottles, not in cans. And everybody
Mm.
thought it was strictly a mixer, right? Because it's a big packaging option. And they weren't, and again, the non-alc arena was so new still in like 2020. And so ultimately, just through a series of smaller pivots within our timeline, we found that the consumer really liked the smaller packaging, and we were able to kind of promote it more as a ready to drink in the individual cans. So as a primary goal, that is how we position it, right? Is a ready to drink. But we give you directions on the label to be like, this is how you would serve it. And ideally, like in the sense of where our product, I think, lays best is like chilled in a martini glass or in a coupe glass, and it like has a little twist of lemon. So you're actually feeling like you're drinking an actual cocktail. And it's meant to be sipped, not chugged. But the interesting part about the non-alcoholic spirits that are out there too is today, we've had partnerships with A Cut Above and Monday, and we've done different things with them because their spirits really just kind of ultimately enhance the flavor profiles that we already have in there. And it's super easy.
Ooh.
Like everything is a 2-to-1 ratio. So if you do like 2 parts Flying Tiger to 1 part Monday or Cut Above or any other spirit, like there's a ton of really great ones out there. It's super easy to make too at home. So it's just simply chill and pour and serve. So
So simple, so straightforward. Or if you want to be all complex about it, you absolutely can.
yes,
And I do love how convenient that size is. It makes it so for for example, if you're like going on a little picnic, you're going on a little adventure, you're going on a little, wherever you want to go and enjoy the things, it's so much easier than some of these other RTDs that it's like, cool, great value, you have a lot in this can, but like, I'm a girl. Like, I
right,
don't have,
right,
I'm a
right,
woman. I mean, I don't have that big of pockets all the time.
right,
So yeah,
right.
so I really appreciate that. Um, all of this is so cool. We've talked a lot about, the backstory up to where we're at today. I'm curious if you have, you know, an inkling of where you want to go in the future. Like, do you want to expand product lines, or are you looking to maybe go into new markets that you haven't hit yet?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. So one of the things, we have taken in the consumer in mind, because we do use cane sugar and some of them have a little bit higher sugar content. We have been exploring, lower sugar options, but without removing the integrity of the drink. So that is a work in progress. That is something that we continue to look at. We've taken our lavender French 75 right now and are trying to play around with it with more monk fruit, a little bit less sugar, not eliminating sugar altogether, but just something that I know when you're in a grocery store today, you're picking up the can or the box, and that's the first thing you're looking at. That being said, simultaneously, we're really trying to promote our product as it is more in tourism. And we recently got onto Royal Caribbean cruises, and that's like a major thing for us.
Wow, that's so
So
cool.
it's so exciting. And that's where we want to be more of because I feel like we have the right packaging, right? And when you're on vacation, you're not so much worried about having sugar in your drink, right? Like those
Mm-mm.
things that don't come to mind. So more in that arena, I think would be amazing. It's really great because for high volume, it's really easy. Like I just said, you can either have it on its own or it's just easy 2-to-1 ratio. And those are the two places that we're currently, trying to build into, like trying to support a customer demographic if we can, but we won't, if it doesn't work, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make the one that's lower sugar, but if it does, great, we're going to bring it out and then getting more into tourism. And then beyond that, I'm not sure.
Well, that's the brilliance of the brand design, I feel, because the whole point is sipping and savoring. This is not a chugging experience, and it's already sans alcohol. So having, again, cane sugar of all sugars, I feel is very responsible. But also like that, if that is the indulgent moment, like it's good to have it in a way that you can celebrate it, right? It's like it's not just like, oh, I'm just gonna sit on the couch and eat a bunch of Oreos and then feel like that's all right. Like in this case, it's like, yes, I can have my sugar, I can enjoy it because it's in a again, it's in a package where it's very easy to consume. Anybody out there who hasn't tried it, definitely go ahead and give it a try. You can take a look at the episode description for all the links, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too. But I mentioned this because I want to go to the tourism thing that we were talking about here. Like back a year ago, my husband and I went to Hawaii and so this is what, 2024. So we're deep in the non-alc movement at this point. And we were thinking, okay, well, we spent a lot of time in Oahu, and even though it's very tourism like centric, we're like, you know what? There's still a lot of like island flavors. Like maybe we'll be able to find something. And every single spot had like it was just juice cocktails. We went to the Hilton. Like we tried to go to all these different places to try to see like is anybody moving on this? And when we noticed that they hadn't, and we were like, "You know what?" And we were just sitting there and we were like, "What exactly do we want right now? Like if we could put anything in this moment, what would it be?" And to your point of this like sipping experience of this like, you're enjoying this ingredient for what it is. I think like it's the perfect setting. So again, understanding not only the ingredients and the branding and the story behind something that we're trying to sell, we're trying to show for all of our listeners that have bottle shops and bars, but also to be able to paint that picture of like where they can take it, what type of lifestyle you can have. I think that's really cool because sometimes there's a lot of brands or beverages that they try to speak to everybody, or they try to make something that is so generic that it can't offend anybody. But in this case, I feel like you nestled into this sweet spot that really describes what it is, and like before you even take a sip, which is super fun. And all of that being said, if a bar or restaurant owner is listening right now, what would you want them to understand about your craft? So I know we already talked about like serving sizes, but
Yeah.
when it comes to like if you were to throw a blind tiger party right now in a blank space, tell me what it looks like. What's the music that's playing? What are people dressed up like? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, so with that, you're really going home to the theme of the glamorous element of the Roaring Twenties, right? There are women who are all dolled up. You're listening to jazz music. It's kind of like a low-key, darker, more romantic, elegant arena, right? That's
Hmm.
really like the kind of the place. But at the same time, I feel like what makes our product great is so remember the roots of this is a speakeasy bar, right? So I understand that key mixologists and bartenders a lot of times like to use very particular ingredients, and this may not be a thing for them. But if you're looking to make a really high quality good drink in a really easy way and a really quick amount of time, this eliminates so much of the work, right? Like with our mojito in particular, you don't have to muddle mint. And the flavor of the mint is not overpowering. It's not obnoxious. Like we intentionally did this so it felt like you were actually replicating the cocktail without making you feel like, I'm not really sure what this tastes like, right? Like we wanted everybody to know exactly what they were getting the moment it hit their lips.
Totally makes sense. It's very clear that you have a lot of thoughtfulness and intention in a lot of the detail that goes into your brand. So, what lessons have you learned as a founder about staying true to your mission, right? Like, because I'm sure there have been plenty of opportunities along the way to pivot a little bit just to make someone else happy, and having to do that while ensuring that you're sustainable.
Right.
So, what's that been like for you?
Yeah, and to be honest, you kind of have to come to the middle ground sometimes too, right? Because you can't be like too refined and too deep into the trenches of what you believe, because what you believe doesn't necessarily translate to your consumer. And I think it's a healthy mix of those two things. And I'll give you like two case in points, and particularly with this brand, right? We introduced when we first launched, we had a sidecar and a south side. And as you see it today, you have a sidecar mimosa and a south side mojito. And the problem is as an emerging brand who's nobody like they see it on the shelf, the general consumer isn't going to know what a sidecar or a south side is and isn't necessarily going to want to invest those dollars into a drink that they don't know. So we did pivot a little bit while keeping the integrity of the cocktail. Like we didn't change the formulation. We added a sparkling element so it aligned with, the term that the consumer would understand. but at the same time, allowing them an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the history of something else. So these are like two combined cocktails. So we kept that together, but also kind of came to terms with the fact that like, okay, we love this. But if we want to get it out to the, to the masses and not everybody, but enough to say stay sustainable, you got to make some changes too along the way.
Very true. And to all those history buffs out there, every single can has fun little facts about each cocktail and the history and where it came from. I just think that's so cool. Anytime that you take a sip, you get a little bit of an educational sip too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you balance being a founder with all of the responsibilities you have? So, tell us what it's like, walk us through a day in your life and what you do to just maintain your centered, grounded balance.
Yeah, if we're being real, I haven't learned that yet.
We're all working on it.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's so
Yeah.
hard. And I wish I would, every day I wish I could tell you I get up and I run a couple miles and I do yoga and I do that. But half the time I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, this idea comes to mind. And I'm like, I really need to finish this. Oh, I forgot about this. Or so then your whole day kind of gets waylaid. And the only thing I've been consistent at as of late is I do not look at anything after 9 o'clock at night, like nothing that's relative to work, right? Because I know it will evoke some emotion if I'm looking at an email or something like that. But it's an ongoing education for me to become a better person for myself, right? To take care of myself better in the process too. And I believe I'll get there. In being authentic, just know that it's definitely not something I'm consistently good at.
Thank you for that response because I have asked multiple entrepreneurs this question on this podcast, and do you know that 0% have figured it out 100% of the way?
Yeah.
And I feel like oftentimes on social media, there's all these like coaches and mentors and people who are trying to hype you up and be like, look, this could be your lifestyle. But the reality is, of all of this, there's a lot of successful people out there. Of the successful people, not all of them get up and jog, not all of them are doing 5 a.m. yoga. Like we're not all jumping into cold tubs. Like
Right.
we all have our own version of finding and maintaining balance. And I feel like a hard part of that too is it's like, okay, well, if I spend this season on balance, that means that I cannot really spend it on growth because those are like very
Sure.
opposite kind of words. I mean, sure, there's someone out there that wants to be like, well, let me show you what balanced growth looks like, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But all of that being said, yeah, I really respect that honesty in your answer. And I think it's cool that like you have, again, you've done so many cool things. You've even given a super cool TED Talk before. What
Oh
was
my
that
God.
like?
I tell anybody, I go, sometimes I bring to life the fact that I did that. And I always say, look, I did a really terrible TED Talk back in 2016. So at that time, I was pursuing my PhD in leadership. And
Mm.
one of the things, as part of my journey in my professional career, I could never find the job that I wanted. And ultimately, that kind of probably has a role in where I am today. But a lot of what I encountered was really bad leadership too.
Mhm.
And so leadership was like a huge element to me. It was the basis of my PhD. And charisma, I found in particular, was how so many band leaders got into so many good positions, right? Because they were charismatic. So that was the study of that. And I always promised myself, like, no matter what, I would be an encourager, a mentor, an authentic person to whomever was part of our team, right? And that can, I mean, authentic can be sometimes too honest, right? As well, but it's definitely that was the driving reason behind that TED Talk. So, and that was 2016. So we're almost 10 years later now, and I've learned a lot since then too, but it was interesting to say the least.
Wow, we literally have an expert on leadership on this call right now,
Oh
which
my God.
means I have to answer or ask this question. So, when people become like bad leaders, I would say that there's like the tiniest percent of the population that wakes up and is like, I want to be evil today, right? Most
Right.
people, they're like, doing the best they can, right? They think like, oh, well, everything that I'm doing, even if it's shitty for someone else, is justified in some way because we need to hit this goal, right? And they think, oh, well, hitting this goal is important because, hey, actually taking care of you. This is how you keep your job. Because if we don't do this thing, everything will fall apart, right? There are some toxic work environments that are like this, and and so much so that I had recently done a podcast episode on these topics because there are a lot of people who want to become entrepreneurs, but they are so scared of becoming the burnout boss that they had
Sure.
had before. So, for anybody in that situation, what advice do you have for them?
I really think, and I honestly think this sometimes about myself too, right? Because when you are down in the weeds of everything and you do get burnout in this industry, sometimes I'm like, would I, if I had a huge team like I had at Room 33, would I have the same capability of being a good leader? I think more than anything, it's just being self-aware of your capacity and your capability at that time. And if you find you don't have to be not all entrepreneurs are leaders, right? Like they can come in, they can build a great business, but they're not necessarily the ones that are inspiring the people behind the scenes to get them there. And I think it's just being able to determine where you truly are. And I think where the issue becomes is the ego. And I think that, if your ego gets in the way, then you're not aware of, what you're doing or the negative impact you might be having because you think everything is going great. So I think it's really just that. It's just having the self-awareness to know your strengths and where you're not. And as an entrepreneur, you can start a business. You don't have to lead the business. You can bring people on to do that.
Love that. I love that because it's true. Some people are amazing idea people, or they worked a job and they loved the job, but they just found a cool way to innovate the job. And so they wanted to like put that in there, but they want to continue to do the job. They don't want to be the leader. So I think that this is a really inspiring message because I mean, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially in 2025. So many you see a lot of entrepreneurs that try to be like, oh, here's me trying to show up on stories every day. Here's me trying to do these things because, I have to. I feel like I have to. We all somewhat feel that pressure. But also, over the past year, my big experiment, my husband and I, because we really wanted to start our family in 2025. So in 2024, we were like, let's do everything we can to set up a business where we only have to work 10 hours a week max so that when the time comes, everything works. We had no idea what we were doing, how we were going to do the things. And there was a lot of pressure to perform at first because, you have this new business, right? And
Right.
once we were able to take the pressure off of ourselves to realize what other beautiful members of the community are out there that have so much to give, that's what really inspired us instantly to start this podcast. We were why are we trying to like we know we're an authority in our space and our specific like genius. I could talk operations strategy all day. Like I could sit here and talk about some boring things for people. But we know that in order to make this a sustainable thing, it's a teamwork effort, right? Reaching out, doing things. So really, the main thing is figuring out what you love to do the most. So I'm curious, what is your like favorite part of the day-to-day job? Like, what's your favorite types of tasks to do?
Yeah, so I think I've talked about this a lot as of late. I have found I don't have my favorite part of my work was creation, right? Not necessarily the product, but creating the things around it, like creating the events or creating the messaging or the communication, like those marketing, communication, all that stuff was the thing I enjoyed the most. I used to write for different publications. Like I loved making an impact in that capacity. Today, though, right now, like I have so much other stuff that I sometimes lose that element of creativity. So if I could get back to that and hire out for the rest, that would be my ultimate goal is to focus more in the marketing space of this business and really driving the brand and the story and connecting with the customer. Like the connection thing is huge for me. And like I said, being authentic. So that is what I would love to do. It's just I don't get to do that as much as I used to. So.
Oh, well, I'm so happy you're here today doing
Oh,
at
thank
least
you.
something that's a little bit more creative than a spreadsheet.
No, this is very fun. Yes, exactly. Like there's a lot of technical things. I'm talking to a lot of buyers, I get a lot of rejection on a day-to-day basis in this arena, right? Like, no, we're not ready for you. No, we're not, we don't want to invest. There's a lot of that. So finding the outlets, like these opportunities are amazing. So I appreciate you bringing me on today and just to talk more about the brand.
Yeah, of course. And I feel like this is a great moment to really talk about resilience because, yeah, there's going to be a lot of no's all the time. And there are some ways that you can structure businesses to have a little bit less of those rejections, supposedly. So, what I'm talking about is like, we have some clients who are creating like digital products that want more evergreen strategies because they are exhausted by sales calls, they're exhausted by certain interactions. So, they want to limit the number of face-to-face rejections. So only the digital like ad space is getting the rejection, so to speak. But at some point, usually the moment the part of our business that we're avoiding working on tends to be the thing that moves the needle. So that being said, anytime you face that resistance, those no's, how do you continue on every day?
Yeah. So really, I think that is rooted probably from when I was younger. Being a piano major, probably being in any artistic space, right? There's a lot of demand and humility that's tied to the arts. And especially if you're a performer, you're constantly vulnerable, whether it's to a group of people listening to you or your teacher. And so I had a lot of people growing up probably that were like, you can't do this, right? Like I think that was kind of the mentality of a lot of different adults that not, I mean, my family was wildly supportive, but outside of that. And I hated people that told me I couldn't do something. And I think it is always just kind of rooted in that. And so just having that strength inside and knowing that when you fall, you get up and it's fine. Like it's not bad. It is not terrible to fail. I've learned more from failing than I've ever learned from any of my successes. And one of the other key thing to keep in mind, because I'm still very guilty of this, is to stay the course. Keep your head down. Do not look at everybody else's journey because I say to myself, and it doesn't always have the effect that I want it to, but comparison is a thief of joy because wherever you are does not mean that you're not going to get somewhere where you really want to be. And to compare yourselves to what others are doing in their timeline doesn't do any good because it doesn't make any sense at the end of the day for you.
It's so true. And I feel like we have these hidden expectations, right? There's people who are listening to this podcast right now being like, but Marina, like the whole point of your podcast is getting to know a bunch of other people's stories in order to have an easier time on my own journey. And that's where I feel like there's a line, right? Like every time I walk into a new podcast where I'm meeting someone for the first time, or even if it's a private meeting that's not recorded for people to listen to, like no matter what, it's always like, you start in one place where you're just like, okay, I don't know what's happening. I'm going up the roller coaster. We'll see where it's going. And honestly, I try to keep that like picture in my head and so that I don't get nervous in any sort of moment. Because I feel like, again, if we're used to getting all these no's, are you going to show up to a call being nervous that they're going to give you a no? Or are you going to show up to a call being like, maybe this is the one? And if it's not, well, we're just sorting through. But like that energy makes such a big difference on every little decision. And I love what you said about resilience here because I feel like I'm the same way. If someone says no to me, I'm like, oh, well, I didn't care that much before, but now that you told me I can't, like, game on. Like, I'm here to show you wrong. Like, I got, I got a I got resistance for days. We're good. So I think that spirit is really important to keep alive, and I think it's really inspiring. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, of course.
And, looking ahead, what are you most excited about for Blind Tiger in the next 12 months?
Oh gosh. It's obviously I'm very like I mentioned, getting on to Royal Caribbean, doing more of the tourism thing, but really I just it's when I reflect back that I realize how far we've come, right? Because incrementally when I'm in the day to day, I'm like, oh, there should be so much more, so much more, so much more. And then I realized, you've really done okay for like a couple years' time. And I think it's probably just a combination of keeping like, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Just keeping keeping pace with today and not trying to get too far ahead. Like we have goals, I have a strategy to get there, but also just trying to live in the moment and be present. Because one of the things as entrepreneurs and as founders that we tend to do a lot, I think, is give up everything else around us a lot of times. So I try to keep the people that are important to me, the animals that are important to me, also as, present as I can too, because that's equally important. And that at the end of my life will be what matters the most. So.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And, full disclosure here, like sometimes I ask questions that I know the answers to. Sometimes I ask questions I want the answers to because I'm just curious. And other times I ask questions that I know are total garbage just because I'm curious
Yeah.
how people respond because I feel the same way. I remember especially being younger when people would ask me like, "Oh, what are you going to college for? Oh, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year?" I went to school for theoretical mathematics, and there's no such thing as mathematician. That's not a job. Like it's not, you go to monster.com, that's not a thing. Like, so you got to be really creative. And then once you tell people, well, yeah, anyway, a point of this whole
Oh,
story, it's just,
no, you're right. Like, but no, seriously, even as I was like, I used to have friends that were like, I'm gonna get married at 19 or 21, and I'm gonna have 6 children, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. So
right.
I've
Like,
always
I'm,
done that.
yeah, like for us, even in our business, we only do 3 months out at a time. So if you're seeing any of our podcasts, our content, anything, I either wrote it today or in the last 3 months, but I never, like, we don't do much more than that because, well, as consultants, we have to like be on the cutting edge, but also like, uh, you want to leave that room for magic. Like, I feel like there have been multiple times in our business where we started thinking it was going to be one thing and then like some random thing happened and all it took was one day for like
Yeah.
magic to occur. And had we planned out those extra couple months surrounding that magic day may have never happened because we were too busy being, or we would have been too busy being control freaks. So has there ever been a time where, um, you've like wanted to kind of get ahead of yourself that you've had to pull back, or have you been at least like, is this something that's been really like strong foundationally for you?
Oh no, I always want to get ahead of myself, right? Like always, I have to remind myself on a daily basis to kind of rein it in and trust the process because as much control as we think we have at the end of the day, we don't, right? Like we can only do so much and whatever's meant to be will be. And there's something to be said for me anyways, to believe in that, to have that faith and the understanding that, I will be guided on the right path ultimately at the end of the day even though I want to take full control and drive it in a certain direction, I know I can only do so much. So it's a really hard pill to swallow on a daily basis, but I think it's important.
Yeah. Well, that being said, what opportunities or connections would you like to call in? Like if there was a magic listener on the other side of these microphones right now, like who do you want to like contact you right now?
Oh,
Or what
no.
opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I want people to try the product. So whether it's somebody that's sitting at home and listening and is like, "Oh, this sounds like so fun and so good." Like I think it's a good product. I think it tastes good. I think it's delightful and fun. There's no functionality to it, right? Like it's not meant to be life-changing, but it is meant to kind of, stir up, just this nice little glamorous fun element to it. So bars or restaurants or individuals like especially like I always want, if there's an opportunity to get it into somebody's hands to give it a taste, I would welcome it.
Yay. And for those of you listening, make sure you check out the description of this episode so that you can get in contact, figure out where you can purchase some blind tiger today, or, get a little bit more inspiration on how to have fun with it. So all of that being said, Rebecca, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I know I've learned a lot and I am so thankful to have heard your story. So that being said, do you have any last calls to action or notes that you just want to leave with our audience today?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to give us a follow on Instagram, it's Blind Tiger Cocktails. Our website is blindtigerspiritfree.com. Go and check us out and learn more about us. And it was my honor and pleasure to be here today. So I really appreciate the opportunity and for you giving us the space to tell our story.
Thank you so much. Oh, and I know I just said that was the last question, but actually there's one more bonus question because it's one of my favorites to ask. If you could wave a magic wand right now and have some magical thing change, whether it's internal for your business or in the industry, what would it be and why?
Oh, geez.
I know it's a big one.
You gave me the toughest question at
I
the end
know.
of the call. No. If I could wave a magic wand and change, I would have a I would have a glorious team. That is, I just want other people, like I want to share this, but I also want I'd love to create opportunity. So if I can create opportunity, then that is kind of one of my core values.
That's probably one of the coolest answers I've ever heard.
Oh, I don't know about that, but
I
thanks.
think so. Creating opportunity is just like asking a genie that tells you you have three wishes for one of your wishes being an unlimited wish. I feel like
Yeah.
that's what that just was. That was the loophole.
Perfect.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you so much. And again, please take a look at the description of this video for all of the resources. And if you have any other questions, comments, concerns, do not hesitate to send me an email, hello@marinamars.com, and I'd be very happy to chat with you about anything, all the things. So, as always, if you need anything, just let me know.